Hi, this is Omar at Top 5 E-Bikes, and this is a full review of the KBO Breeze Step Thru. If you haven't subscribed to Top 5 E-Bikes, please do so right now. Also like this video if you enjoy the content. Also want to mention that there are affiliate links in the description of this video and all our videos. And if you do end up purchasing this bike, the KBO Breeze, or any of the accessories that we have linked in the description, we do get a small commission. So do want to mention that. But again, if this video helps you decide on this particular e-bike or accessories, you can support Top 5 E-Bikes by using the affiliate links. So I'm going to walk you through all the specs of this e-bike, the KBO Breeze Step Thru. Did want to mention that we have reviewed a couple other KBO bikes, the KBO Breeze, the step over version, which is one of the first e-bikes that we reviewed. Also the KBO Hurricane, which is a very different bike than this particular e-bike. Right now this e-bike is $14.99, and there's actually a $100 coupon off. They do a lot of promotional codes or promos and sales at KBO, so by the time you're watching this, potentially might be less, but retail is $14.99 this e-bike. Overall, this e-bike, the one thing I would say about the specs is that if I had to summarize it, this is an out-of-the-box commuter bike. So out-of-the-box city bike that you're going to use on paved roads, and you can see this here, that you have a rack, you have fenders, you have lights. We'll get into the details here in a sec where we'll zoom in on the different parts and we'll spend some time on each of these parts. But just in general, if I had to summarize this bike, I would say that this is a $1,500 or sub $1,500 commuter e-bike that's ready out of the box. So let's start talking about the components. The first one I'm going to talk about is the motor. This is a 500 watt nominal motor. Normally, there's a lot of 500 watt nominal motors out there. This one, I would say that it has a lot of zip for being a 500 watt nominal motor. We don't know who actually makes this motor, but I can say that we rode this next to the Aventon Adventure on the way here, and this one would actually get off the line quicker than the Aventon Adventure, even though it has a 750 watt motor. But top speed, at least for us, with the default settings on this e-bike, was around 24 miles per hour, so 24, 25 miles per hour seemed to be where we would top out. But throttle only, it seems to take off really well. The other thing I would note about this e-bike and the motor is we had a KBO Breeze Step Thru, and the motor on that e-bike just seemed jerkier. So I don't know if they've updated the current KBO Breeze Step Thrus, but this bike, the motor just seems, the transitions between the different pedal assists just seem smoother, and it doesn't seem jerkier between pedal assist level 1 and 2, and that's sort of what we experienced with the first bike. And in the review we even said like there's a lot of power in this e-bike, but this e-bike seems to have the same power, but it just transitions much smoother. So I think overall it's just a better riding experience. So now that we talked about the motor, let's talk about the battery, the other big component of this e-bike. It's a 768 watt hour battery, which is a pretty good sized battery for a commuter bike in this price range. The KBO Breeze Step Thru has the same exact size battery, and we did a battery drain test for that particular e-bike. We haven't done one for this e-bike. My guess is just from riding around that you could easily get around 40 miles of range on this e-bike if you're not using throttle only. So pretty, good sized battery for the price and then for this style of e-bike. Now let me talk about some of the other major components. So we talked about the battery, we talked about the motor. Let's talk about the brakes. So not anything special with these brakes, except that they're Tektro brakes, which, yeah, a year ago we would have said, no big deal. Everyone has Tektro brakes. Not so much these days. So there's a lot of the big brands that are swapping out Tektro brakes because they don't actually have them in stock. This KBO Breeze that we just got, a month or two ago, it actually had Tektro brakes, which is actually kind of nice. So they're mechanical brakes. These are not hydraulic brakes, but again, there's a lot of the major brands that are actually swapping out the parts because they can't actually find Tektro brakes. So I think that that's actually a nice thing that these guys, at least for now, still have these major brand name parts like the brakes. Also, talking about just not components that are not in stock, the drivetrain on this e-bike is an Alta Shimano. Again, it's not a given that even though the bike is listed to have a component like a drivetrain that's made from Shimano, that you're actually going to get a Shimano drivetrain when you get your e-bike. So we've received e-bikes that the specs on the site say that they're Shimano or Tektro brakes, and then when you get it, it's actually a different brand that you've never heard of. So again, these guys are still, at least for now, KBO is still shipping out these bikes with the Altus Shimano drivetrain, which again is not, it's obviously entry level, but it's still Shimano. So it's the same thing with the shifter. Shifter wise, we have this entry level shifter. It's a 7-speed drivetrain. I didn't mention that, but which is pretty typical. With this e-bike, just being a city commuter, and probably you're not going to be going up many hills, you're probably not going to use many of the gears, but it's kind of nice that you have this entry level Shimano shifter drivetrain. So I mentioned that this was an out-of-the-box ready commuter e-bike, which is not the norm. A lot of times you have to buy a rack, or you have to buy, you know, it doesn't come with integrated lights or whatever the case is. This one's ready. And I'm going to tell you why I think it's ready. First thing is that it comes with a rear rack already installed. So this is a pretty solid rear rack. Pretty similar to the original, or to the Step Over Breeze, which also had a solid rear rack. So you got a rear rack. You also have integrated lights in the back, and you have one in the front, which is kind of nice. So again, this, in my opinion, also makes it ready to be a commuter e-bike. You also have fenders. So it comes with these actual metal fenders, both on the front and the back. And that's not a given these days, because normally you get a plastic or a cheap plastic fender. So you have fenders, you have a rack, you have integrated lights. And that, in my opinion, makes this a pretty good, and what I would consider an out-of-the-box commuter e-bike. Lastly, what I'm going to talk about, and this kind of relates to comfort as well, is just more of what type of grips do you have, what type of throttle, and then the handlebars, the position of them. You have these faux leather grips. They're not my favorite. They definitely get the job done, especially with the city commuter bike, which is what, you know, I think for this type of bike, they're fine. Again, they're not my favorite. The other thing is it has a right twist throttle. It seems to be that a lot of people like the right twist throttle better than the left thumb throttle, which I prefer the left thumb throttle, but again, I've talked about that in many videos. It's not my favorite thing, but again, it just gets the job done. And then finally, the last thing is you don't have an adjustable stem extender or an adjustable stem. I think it would have been nice for KBO to include that in this bike, especially in this price range, because you see a lot of e-bikes that cost a couple $100 more that actually have that. It's not a big deal. You can buy it for 20 bucks on Amazon. Most people that end up buying this e-bike end up doing that just so they can adjust the handlebars. But you know, at least for now, it just comes with this standard stem. So I want to give you my final thoughts on the KBO Breeze. We went through the specs of this e-bike. By the way, we also have a first impressions video that I did. So after riding it for about 25 miles, I gave you my first impressions. I think overall, and after having ridden this bike a little bit more, there are things that I definitely like about this e-bike. I think that for an e-bike in the $1,400 range, right now it's $1,400 because there's a $100 off coupon, but I think for a commuter e-bike in the $1,400 range, it's nice that this is an out-of-the-box commuter e-bike, which isn't what you normally get in this price range. I think the other things that I really like about this e-bike are that you get name brand components still. So you're still getting Tektro brakes, you're getting a Shimano drivetrain. So again, I don't think you're going to find another e-bike in this price range that has a bigger battery than this e-bike at 768 watt hours. So I still stand by that. I think that that's one of the main features of this e-bike, aside from the fact that it's a commuter e-bike, that's an out-of-the-box commuter e-bike. It's a step through, so it's, you know, there's a lot of versatility with this e-bike, and all kinds of people could ride it because of the type of frame. Also, it's got a suspension, so that's also a really nice thing in that, you know, this type of e-bike is mostly for paved roads. It's got a little bit of the thicker tires, but you have a suspension, so you could ride this on a packed dirt trail, and it should be fine. And we, in fact, rode it on a dirt trail to get here. But yeah, those are the things I really like. I also think there's a couple other things that KBO could have done to make this bike even better, although it's difficult to say that they should have done it at this price point. I mentioned that they have name brand brakes like Tektro. It would have been nice if they had hydraulic brakes, because for a few $100s more, you can get an e-bike like the Ride 1 Up 700 series, which has a ton of upgrades compared to this e-bike. Like it has hydraulic brakes. It also comes with an adjustable stem. So I mentioned that earlier, that this one doesn't have an adjustable stem, but other e-bikes for just a few $300 to $400 more, you're going to get a lot more quality components and options than this e-bike. But overall, I think it's a good e-bike if you're looking for a budget city commuter bike that's ready out of the box, where you don't have to buy a rack or integrated lights and kickstands and all these other components or pieces to it. So this one's going to come ready. Assembly for it was really easy as well, and we'll throw in some clips here of when I assembled this e-bike. But yeah, overall I think it's a good e-bike. They could have done a little bit more, but again, in this price range, I think you still get pretty good value just based on the fact that the battery is pretty big and that it's an out-of-the-box commuter e-bike. Let us know if you have any questions or comments. Again, you can follow us on Instagram, on Facebook, subscribe to Top 5 E-Bikes, and thank you.